What's happening, weirdos? This is John Vervaeke. Who is John Vervaeke, if you don't know? I didn't know. I was introduced to him by my friend James, who I love very dearly, and he said, John is one of the most interesting and brilliant philosophers and thinkers that he's ever encountered, and that was enough. I was like, okay. He's all about meaning, finding and making meaning, and recovering from the meaning crisis that I think we can all feel so many times in our lives, a lack of meaning. Human beings need meaning, and that is his trade. He has a new book called Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. It is available now, whomever you get your books. And you can also check him out on YouTube. I listened to a series of his lectures on YouTube, and I really, really enjoyed them, as you are about to hear me gush and expound upon with him in this conversation. So I hope you enjoy. Not much to plug up top from me other than coming up November 21st is my next Largo show here in Los Angeles. Always fun. That's where I try my new jokes and do some of the new hour favorites that I'm loving. It's so fun. It's the best show and the best time. Val always comes with me. We have incredible guests. We have music. So the next one is on November 21st in LA, followed by Indianapolis, Seattle, Portland on December 20th. We are shooting that for a special, so get tickets to the late show. Early show is sold out in Portland, December 20th. December 21st is Eugene, Oregon. That's sold out. And then Phoenix, Arizona. All of those are available on PeteHolmes.com, and we will be adding more dates shortly. In the meantime, enjoy this chat with the brilliant, the engaging, the wise, the fun, John Vervaeke. Get into it. See, I've been listening to you, and I love you. I think you're fantastic. Sorry, I just LA'd you. I said I love you, but you know what I mean. Like, I deeply resonated with and felt a kinship. That's a better way to put it.
I like that. That's great.
Yeah, right? Instead of being phony and all that. But the threshold of a house. See, you get me in that place where I start thinking abstractly and symbolically and finding all this meaning. And when somebody explained to me that the threshold, or like the mudroom of a house, is to help you transition.
Yeah, right. Liminal. Yeah.
That liminal space. Yeah. So that's where you're finding me is. They did very well, but I was kind of not rushing, but I had my daughter, and my wife got like kind of attacked by the dog, our dog. Oh. Not in a bad way. Just sort of overwhelmed. He's a huge 111 pound dog. He can overwhelm me, and I'm a giant. But so it was just like, when I'm doing something, I like it to be the only thing I'm doing.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Right?
Yeah.
It's almost spectrumy. I don't like gear shifting. I don't want to be my mother's son and my wife's husband. I hate that. I'm just like, I hate this. And I don't want to be father and podcast host. And I don't want to be comedian and friend. I'll never go to dinner before a show. Right. I hate all those gear shifts. So anyway, I needed the magic mind and sort of...
Do you need a little bit more time?
No, I don't.
To dial in?
This is that time. This is our verbal threshold.
Okay, great.
Are you that way? I'm like a...
Yeah, very much. I don't like when worlds collide. Yeah,
it's the worst.
No, it's interesting about me because by profession, I actually bridge between all the disciplines in the world. But like you, I like to keep things like focused.
It's the illusion. Well, people say that to me too. They go, "Oh, you do so many things," and I go, "If you saw my life, you would be bored to tears." Like, not really. It's like being a firefighter. There's moments of peak adrenalized sort of stuff, but there's a lot of just. Yeah, staring into space. I loved what you said about our ability to write things down and then reflect and get an inventory of our minds.
Oh,
tell me, what's up?
I brought you a copy of the book.
Oh, please. Yeah. Speaking of the written word.
Yeah, that's what it is. Exactly.
But I love... I'm just going to keep going, if you don't mind. What you're doing is, and I think this is a very high compliment because there is something sort of wizardly about this. Oh, awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. Well, let's talk all about it. I'll put it right here so people can see it. You're an enlivening individual, and
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm glad you received that because I think that's one of the best things you can do is remind people of how many things, not in an overwhelming way, but how many things are going on. Oh, right. I'm a product of my culture and my money and my language and and living in California and being a white male or whatever it might be. I've inherited all these things that I've sort of confused as baseline, but really they're kind of all over the place and wild.
Right.
And so like a good educator can really like enliven their students with like, you know, when you see a good movie and you leave and your pupils are dilated and the whole world looks kind of like you're on a psychedelic.
Yeah.
Like you're literally letting in more light.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm very excited to be talking to you. I could be talking I could offshoot on all of that. How a camera lens is like a dilated pupil. Who cares? How are you today? There's so much going on. How are you feeling today?
Great. I mean, this whole thing has been wonderful. I mean, I've had just great podcast conversation after conversation.
Good.
And then with James, I had 2 live events yesterday, and live events are super jazzy.
Yeah.
Because you have the people really there, and you can get the vibe, and you can do the Q&A and
Yeah.
everything. And so I've just been having an amazing time.
Well, that's you talk a lot about the flow state.
Yeah,
and
very
as a
much.
public speaker, you know, making a video. We're making a video, but this is sort of. I think it's significant that Katie is here, and so there's a mini merging going on.
Yeah.
But with a live audience, to your point about flow state, there's a how do you phrase it? It's like failure is significant. Like if you
it
fail,
matters.
it'll matter.
Yeah, it matters.
And that is so essential to me as a comedian. Is
Right.
if you fail,
Right.
it'll hurt you.
Yeah.
People say, "How do you write so much?" I go, "It's a treadmill. Like there's a consequence if I stop." I'll fall off the treadmill. Like
Right,
I
right.
have to keep going.
Right.
But when I sit down to write a book, for example, much harder to motivate myself unless you can really kind of. That's why I'm interested in the authors that do public readings of their work because they want to imbue it with those stakes. Like, whoops, that paragraph stinks.
Yeah.
And you feel that pain. So you get that when you do a live event and you get jazzed. You say.
Very much.
And all those cues. And it's a little
and people will often ask you questions that you haven't quite anticipated, and that makes you turn and look in a different direction.
Yeah.
And I find that very exciting.
All my favorites say that. So James I'm like a non-dual person. That's something I enjoy, and the teacher that I love the most is Rupert Spira, and he gets asked these questions, and I'm like, it's the most annoying question in the world to me. And the mark of the true teacher is that they seem to be lit up by it, like what you just said. It's like, oh, you're making me think about it in a new way. Like the dough has been reanimated, whereas I'm just like, will you shut up? That's why I'm not a spiritual teacher. I want to be like, shut up. I wrote a whole book about that. You have to like be present and allow a rediscovery, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I aspire to be like Socrates, and he was always willing to go in and to question and to listen and to probe and to be opened up and to open other people up. So that's really what that inspires me on a daily basis.
Yeah, I love that. So this is what I thought. I don't normally come in and think, oh, that'll be a fun way to start and talk about springing it. It's not like that. It's not a challenge. I thought it would be interesting if you, with all of the different lenses you have, tell me what's going on here. What is this?
Okay, what is this?
You're not just reality. I don't mean consciousness. I mean like you, John, are my guest on a podcast. You could talk about what's going on with you personally. You have a projection of how it should go, whatever. Or you could talk about the framework. There seems something sort of the metaphor of it. I don't know. Like, you're my guest.
Yeah.
We're going to merge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
We want to, what do we want out of it? I think it's a good microcosm of, a good podcast is a good little day, you know? Tell me, don't let me lead you. I just thought listening to you, I was like,
no, that's good.
You could unpack being a guest on a podcast, driving here, what's going through your mind, however you want to take that question.
Okay, well, I'll start because, what's going through my mind right now is, I literally had the sentence run through my mind. Hey, I like this guy.
We're sniffing butts, right?
Yeah.
That's why I was like, I'm very excited. I want to demonstrate to you a certain level of like interest in all that sort of stuff to peacock to you.
Yeah,
so
well,
you can.
There's a musicality to you. Like there's a your speech is almost like music. Like there's rhythms and it's running up and down and there's shifts in intonation.
Which is me trying to get you to do that too. Actually, I'm trying to enliven you, right?
Yeah,
it's not a deliberate,
but it's infectious, and I'm picking up on it.
Right.
And so, and what that's doing is it's drawing me out, and I'm looking forward to interacting with you, and I'm very curious.
Right.
What is it? What does Pete want? What's he going to ask me? What's going to be the angle, the connection?
Same.
Yeah.
That's a good episode when you're looking forward to doing it. You have an expectation that it could be something special, or spectacular.
Yeah.
Could kind of here's a metaphor: sweep you off your feet, like kind of like pick you up, swirl you around, and then we get left back.
I'm kind of now experiencing a bit of gratitude that this is going to be my final thing. It feels like a nice way of sort of, there's something, I don't know, sort of relaxing and flowy already about this interaction.
I'm glad. Well, I loading up on you, I was like, I feel safe to introduce that. Sometimes I fantasize. I'm like, before every episode, we should say, let's remember that we're going to die one day. Let's invoke the opportunity that we can share. How many people might hear this?
Yeah.
How long might this live? Who might be touched? All that sort of stuff. But sometimes it's too embarrassing to talk that way. People get weirded out.
Yeah.
So keep going.
Well, I'm interested in how quick your mind moves, and so what I'm considering is, I hope this doesn't come off the wrong way. My mind moves very fast.
Yeah.
And so I'm usually having to slow things down a little, the way it feels in my head because I want to connect with my interlocutor.
Yeah.
But I'm having a feeling like, oh no, this is going to be like when I'm sparring with somebody. I mean, in the good sense.
No, I do. I know you do martial arts.
Yeah.
Exactly. When I get off stage, my wife often goes, remember, they haven't heard it before.
Yeah.
She's like, and that's not to say they're dumb. That's to say that the way my mind works when it gets excited is it starts going too quickly. And she's like, when you teach, or is that what we want to call it? I give a talk or?
No, I'm a teacher.
Yeah, teacher.
And
okay.
And I don't have fans or followers. I have students.
Okay, great. Perfect. So when you're teaching, I don't get the feeling of like, oh, this is going too fast. In fact, here's a really weird compliment I can give you. You allow for a 5-second, maybe I'm drifting and I can come back and I'm still, you're not going so fast that, I got to go back. That sounds like maybe I'm throwing shade on you. Like it's boring.
No. I was taking that as
I think it's a high compliment.
Yeah. I was taking it as an encouraging compliment because trying to get that cadence, and trying to make sure the last thing I want to do is lose people.
Yeah.
I seriously am not interested in sort of promoting my status. I really want to connect.
Yes.
And so I want to make sure that I talk a lot when I teach a graduate teaching workshop, graduate students on how to teach, and I talk a lot about that, about really get into the rhythm and try to make sure that
it's show business.
Yeah,
it's a show.
I tell them a big part of teaching is performance. I actually use that line.
Yeah. That was actually something I was excited to say to you because I listened to the first 3. I'm going to keep going, which is itself its own type of compliment because there's the research umbrella. I'm researching my guests, but then just the enjoyment umbrella. I like to continue with the podcast.
Thank you.
I think it's fantastic. But I was listening to it, and there are these great lectures, and I was like, yeah, comedians tape specials, and this is Optimum Condition, my favorite venue. I'll have my coffee. I'll have my favorite. No, please. Yeah. I'll have my meal. Whatever it is that makes me so comfortable. I go out. It's my time. It's my birthday, and we film it. And then that is the representation. When really comedy on the ground is sort of like clubs. Sometimes they're drunk. Sometimes you're tired. Sometimes you're jet lagged. But you when I was thinking about it was with teaching. Why are we so anchored and weighed down, bad anchored, like trapped? With and now the professor who might be going through a divorce is going to give that lecture when we could be doing a film like what you're doing. Like here's a film where I presume you had your coffee and your right amount of sleep and you felt like doing it or however you orchestrated it to be optimum. But that seems to be like a new approach to teaching instead of like the professor giving the same lecture for the 500th time. They're not feeling it. It sucks. It seems like a better way to do it.
That's an excellent observation. I didn't come up with the idea. It was actually a former student of mine who approached me and said, like, the material you're doing in class, you got to share it with the world. And my dad is a professional editor and I'm a professional videographer. We'll do it for free.
No way.
That's how it happened. And Alan Kean, and I'm forever grateful to him. But that's exactly right. Although I have to tell you, when I first was there, like a lot of people, I'll get comments, is there anybody else in that room with you?
Yeah.
And there was nobody there. I had to. So when I was the very first lecture, it was like, whoa, because I was used to getting the vibe from my student.
Right.
So I had to imagine students there.
Wow.
And then as soon as I did, then I got what you were saying. It was like, oh wow, this is a different venue. This has a different potentiality, different possibilities.
It's what we're doing here.
Yeah.
I don't actively pretend that people are listening. I think that would make it different. And sometimes we do this live, and it would be not, in my opinion, not as good. It would be different. I'd be trying to be funny. Ugh. We'd both be going for applause, like real time.
Right.
With Bill Maher, like we'd both be trying to like nail, like aggrandize ourselves. Basically, you can't help. But I'm not surprised. So not only is it show business that you're speaking, but you're also acting. You're pretending like there's students there. Yeah,
I'm pretending there's students there, and then I'm often trying to. For me, I don't want to just present the propositions of these thinkers. I want to presence their perspective. Some people have told me it's almost like a secular seance. I'm trying to make. Yes. I don't want them to just hear Socrates. I want them to feel as if Socrates is present, so they could start to see the world the way Socrates sees it.
A transmission. That's what that's saying. The spiritual.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Ram Dass was a well. There's Ram Dass on the wall there. It doesn't matter. But his gift, which I experienced, which is very non-scientific, but what I experienced, I feel like I have to say that to you, but he could transmit his teacher, and it was like a reliable phenomenon. I'm not really that into woo, but that of the short list of woo things I've experienced, is someone that would like.
Yeah, I think there's probably. My scientific reputation is I go into areas that have previously been talked about as woo, and I find a way of talking about them. Right. Scientifically and legitimately. And so I'm very open when people, especially when people are not sort of woo-wee, they say, well, generally no, but this. And then I'll go, okay, I want to think about that. I want to look in that. I want to investigate that.
Well, forgive me for queuing you up to repeat something, but the study about people, myself included, we love feeling like magical humans. I know when you're staring at me.
Oh, feeling of being stared at. Yeah.
But do you mind? I'll summarize it.
Please.
Instead of burdening you. People were good at it, but then they noticed that if what was happening was the scientists doing the study would tell them if they were right or wrong.
Yeah.
And then what was happening was the scientist was unconsciously doing what they thought was a random pattern, which isn't a random pattern because we're very bad at being random.
Right.
But we're also good at pattern recognition. So the subject who's blindfolded with earplugs is actually unconsciously tuning into the pattern that the experimenter
exactly.
doesn't know they're doing.
Right.
And if you stop saying if you're right or wrong, you're terrible at it.
That's right. It falls to chance.
That sort of stuff lights me up. I thought that was so interesting.
Now the thing about that is, notice what I'm not trying to be dismissive, because what I'm actually pointing people to is you actually have this amazing power. You have this capacity for implicit learning. Without explicit awareness or effort, you can pick up on very complex patterns. And that's actually, this is Hogarth's notion. This is actually what's behind our intuitions. And then once you understand it scientifically, you can ask yourself, okay, what are the powers and the perils of this implicit learning, and what can we do to reduce the perils and enhance the power?
Which is a super exciting idea, because you offered the example that a bigot has the wrong.
That's right. So the problem, one of the problems with its power is that it's implicit, so you don't have to load working memory, right? And consciousness isn't filled, but right, what that means is it can't. It doesn't distinguish between the kinds of patterns it's picking up on.
Right.
So it doesn't distinguish causal patterns from merely correlational patterns.
Which they did on The Simpsons, where Lisa says to Homer, look, Dad, there's no tigers around. This rock is keeping the tigers away. And Homer says, it's perfect. He goes, Lisa, I would like to buy your tiger warding off rock. Or he doesn't say warding off. But that's a wrong
Yeah, I
correlation.
mean, I give a couple of examples of the large weddings are correlated with long marriages, but that doesn't mean making your wedding bigger will make
Right.
your marriage last longer.
When you said that, I had a relatively small wedding, and I was like, oh. But then when you explain that it's because you have a social network,
Yeah.
and finances, it's
Yeah.
This is one of the things people don't like about science is it can be very like y'all are apes. You know what I mean? It's a little insulting to our. You know what I mean?
No,
I don't
of
think
course.
it is insulting. I think people can be insulted.
No, I take your meaning well,
Yeah,
Pete.
yeah.
I mean, and to be fair to people who have that response, there is a subpopulation of scientists who revel in a kind of arrogant rubbing people's faces in that kind of thing, and I'm very critical of that. I don't think that is the proper philosophical stance from which you should be practicing science. Right. And the practice of a science is more important than the products of science.
Tell me what you mean. Like great power, great responsibilities.
Well, a little bit more than that. And this actually goes to the hallmark of one of the defining features that makes people rational, right? The products of science will be obsolete. This is a famous argument by Larry Lawden. Almost all of the previous theories have been shown to be predominantly false. So if we think we're going to get these perfect, polished products, that's what science is about, and we glory in the products,
right.
we're actually buying false gold.
Right.
But if we say no, the science is like democracy. Democracy is actually, I think Winston Churchill said it great. It's the worst government next to all the rest, because in many ways it's less efficient and blah and blah blah. But democracy, what it has going for it is a tremendous capacity for self-correction. And science, that's what it has going for it. The practice of science is a practice of self-correction.
Right.
But the attitude that is most affording of that self-correction is an attitude of humility and wonder, not an attitude of I know and I'm going to rub your face in it.
Right. That's really interesting. It reminded me of. I'm not a person who says this, but I've heard people, I don't disagree with it, but they say God is a verb, right?
Yeah.
It's like science is a verb,
yes.
Meaning it's not really, and democracy is a verb. It's the chiding, but it's the moving forward. There seems something it's a paradox. It's like a rabbinical teaching. It's like, at least we're moving forward.
Well, and I mean, I think there are deeper reasons maybe we'll get into later about why the quest for a perfect final state, final solution, I use that phrase advisedly, right, is actually a perennial sort of sin of humanity that we have to continually steer ourselves away from.
Well, we see that in our everyday life. I have a joke about this where I go, it's a theory that the reason why fish grew legs and walked out of the ocean wasn't because they were curious. It's because of the asteroid. Maybe, have you heard that the asteroid the size of Texas hit the planet, like boils the ocean, makes them toxic. So the fish had to. It was like very unpleasant. And I'm like, I love that we were born on the backs of catastrophe and we evolved, and now we walk around going like, why can't things be perfect? That's literally the cosmic joke. It's like you're here because a fish was being cooked in its own habitat and had to walk out. And then that became a guy in line at Starbucks going like, why do they even have the mobile order app if it's not gonna, you know what I mean? Like that's the joke. But every day I rebel against my own emotions that I deem unpleasant and negative. And then we see it again and again, not just the fish, but my personal growth comes from adversarial, adversity is what the word I'm looking for. And also all the greatest feelings are on the other side of something that was challenging to you. We don't just want to sit. Remember the movie WALL-E?
Yes.
The big heavy people in the motorized things drinking the slushies that taste like whatever they want. That is a sin. Meaning it's missing the mark. That's not life.
That's right.
Gilgamesh, you referenced, that's more fumbling and failing and returning with a new perspective is more life than being in a massage chair your entire life.
And think, the life metaphor is perfect because biologically speaking, it doesn't make any sense to ask, what's the final form that life is going to take? It's like, well, you don't understand biology, you don't understand evolution, you don't understand genetics. You don't there can't be ever a final form of life. Life is the process of something that continually redefines and redesigns itself. That's what makes life life.
Right. And still That's why it's so, I never tire of seeing I think we all love the very rich and the very famous being miserable. Don't you think there's something kind of perennially true? It's like, look, Buddha leaving the kingdom. We love going
I think that without a significant amount of existential dissatisfaction, the cultivation of wisdom it's not going to call to people. Yes.
Right. So would you say that one of the keys to a good life is learning how to surrender to and engage with things not being how we want them to be, and recognizing that that's part of it?
Yeah, and my particular slant on that is to get people to discern, and spiritual discernment is, many traditions emphasize this as central. Getting people to discern between things like pleasure, contentment, and meaning in life, and what the research shows they will want as they confront deeper challenges, or even as they confront their own death, is the markers of success and contentment, and even the memories of pleasure won't be what gives you that sense of wanting to go on. It's the meaning in life that really matters.
Yeah.
And so and this is sort of at the core of my work, trying to get people to understand why this is so central and why it's so much at risk right now in our current civilization.
It's like the wrong things are on offer.
Well, yeah. So, for example, let's do three. So, wealth is initially predictive of what's called subjective well-being. Subjective well-being is, I feel good, my life is good. So initially, wealth, as you increase wealth, subjective well-being skyrockets because people are getting out of poverty. Once people are reliably out of poverty, though, the curve flattens like this. And you have to do huge increases in wealth to make small differences in subjective well-being. So the pursuit of wealth for the pursuit of subjective well-being, right, becomes actually technically irrational. But subjective well-being isn't the same thing as meaning in life. So I'll give you the quintessential experience in which subjective well-being collapses and meaning in life goes up. Having a child. So when you have a child, it's like you're in a shipwreck. You're wet all the time. There's an alarm going off. You're never eating. The person that you thought loved you the most doesn't like you anymore, right? You're sick all the time. Your finances are collapsing.
Underreported how you're just sick for 3 years.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And you ask people, well, why are you doing this? And they'll tell you, because it's so meaningful. And that's because children sort of satisfy the questions or the criteria you're looking for that constitute meaning in life.
Yes. Taking my daughter to Universal Studios, I used to go, I don't know if you'd say later in life, but I was 38 when Lila, is that right? Let's not stop and do the math. It was around there. And I used to go to Universal Studios, just as a single guy. And now I take her and I'm like, this is a completely different experience. You look back on that previous guy, smoking weed and going to Disneyland, and you're just like, how depraved was that? Like, Seinfeld has a great joke about that. It's like both sides, the childless fun having and the suffering children having, both look at the other and go like, that's insane.
Yeah.
They're both right and they're both wrong.
Right, because subjective well-being, you have to have subjective well-being in a good life. I'm not some dour person.
Yeah.
But all I'm saying is don't confuse wealth with subjective well-being, and don't confuse subjective well-being with meaning. You need enough wealth to give you mastery over your environment so you're not continually under threat.
Yeah.
You need subjective well-being because that's a marker that you're basically healthy. But you need meaning in life because that's the marker that you are leading the life that is cultivating good personhood.
Yeah. I heard that the number is like something like $380,000 after $380,000. Did I say $380,000?
Yeah.
300 would be 3 million. Anyway, that money becomes pretty irrelevant.
Yeah, the graph flattens. It literally plateaus.
Yeah.
And so, and what typically happens is the extra wealth gets turned into projects that are generative, generally, of meaning in life.
Like creative projects?
Yeah.
Like this. So we get desperate and No shade here. Judd Apatow, one of my best friends and a hero of mine, has reached a certain level where he's not worried about money. And then you see him bestowing that. He gave me a TV show. He gives Pete Davidson a movie. And they become like these sort of father figures that want to give it to the next generation. I have to imagine that's very meaningful.
It is. I mean, we can talk a little bit, if you'd like, about the science of meaning in life.
Yeah,
so I'm not talking about the meaning of life. The meaning of life is a metaphysical proposal.
I'm glad you said that, because when I was like, oh, John Vervaeke, he's the meaning guy, and then you started talking about it, I was like, compliment. This is far more interesting than I thought. I thought you were just going to be like, get out there and clap your hands. You got to exercise every day. Try to eat greens or something. It's not that at all. So I'm glad you're addressing this.
Yeah, there's a lot of science around this, and I'm privileged to participate in it. So there's sort of 4 dimensions to meaning in life. A good way of thinking about it is meaning is a metaphor, and we're saying there's something about the structure of our life, the structure of our experience, that's like the way a sentence works, because sentences are literally meaningful. And so what is it? Well, all the words have to cohere together. They can't be jumbled. They have to be in the right order. They have to be coherent, right? They have to make sense to you. And your life can't be absurd. Your life have to have a kind of coherence. There can't be that clash between perspectives that makes you feel that your life is absurd. It has to hang together in some way.
I wonder if that's why, sorry to interrupt.
No,
but
please.
I feel like you're, you know what you're saying.
Yeah, I do.
I feel like that's why like corporations and people often have like a mission statement that's very clean. Literally, they can distill themselves into something like...
They're trying for that coherence.
They
because the coherence really matters. Now, the mission statement also shades into the second thing, which is purpose. Now, you have to be very careful about purpose, and this is another thing the culture is a little bit mixed up about. People confuse purpose with sort of a final goal. Right. Once I get there, I'll be happy.
Right.
And that's very problematic, because if you don't reach it, then your life is meaningless. And then if you reach it and you continue to live, your life is meaningless.
Right.
So instead of thinking about the word I prefer is orientation. You have like a North Star. You have something that orients you, so you know how to, on a reliable way, navigate through the world, track your way through the world, and then narrate your world. Keep track of your tracking to yourself. So that's what purpose is. And contrary to what a lot of people think, purpose isn't the most important of these 4 factors. The next 2 are sort of 2 sides of the same coin. The next is significance. You want there to be things in your life that are like have like depth and reality and value to you. They're not superficial. They're not trivial. They're not ephemeral. They're deep. And then the last one, the one that matters the most, is called mattering. And mattering is, you want to be. So I'll start with the metaphor, and then we'll unpack the metaphor. You want to be connected to something larger than yourself. You want it to be connected. And now, obviously, people don't mean that literally. If I were to chain you to a rock, go, hey, oh, wow, this is great.
Yeah.
So what do they mean? So the way of thinking about it is like this. Like, when you're in a dream, you're in this little world, and you think it's real, and then you move to a bigger world, right? And the bigger world allows you to see the flaws and the biases and the incoherencies of the smaller world. And that bigger world, see, real is not like red. Real is like tall. It's a comparative term. And so the bigger is, I want to be connected to something that's more real. It's this wanting to be connected to more real. When people have mystical experiences, this is Yaden's work, and they talk about encountering the really real. They will change their professions. They will change their relationships. They'll try and change their identity.
These are near-death experiences. These are psychedelic experiences.
Psychedelic experiences,
profound
mystical
dreams.
And what they do is they want to come into conformity with that.
Right.
So that mattering, right? And the way you can ask yourself if you've got mattering and sort of significance, because they're sort of 2 sides of the same coin, is these 3 questions. What do you want to exist even if you don't? How really real is it? And how much are you connected to it, and how much does it matter to you? Like, how much of a difference does it make to how you live your life? And think about how kids quintessentially satisfy that. Well, do you want your kids to survive when you aren't around? Of course you do. That's the project.
Yeah.
Are they really real? You better believe it. The one thing that can, if you aspire to be a good parent, the one thing that can reliably turn the arrow of egocentrism away from the super salient self to something else is a kid. Right?
Yeah.
And do you want to be connected to your kid? And do you want to make a difference in their life? And do they? Of course.
Yeah. Right. Here's a good metaphor. These are my children. People say about their dogs. People say about their work. People say about their art.
Yes.
You know, these are my children.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
I sometimes feel that way about some of my theories. And you have a relationship to them. You go, because you have to sort of let them go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to stop owning them. You have to let them go into the world and have a life of their own.
My friend Kumail is married, and he says he looks at his career like a dog, and sometimes the dog tears up the bed sheets and shits on them. And it's like his career can be wild, and sometimes it brings a bag of gold in its mouth, and you just have to go like, that's the dog. But that's another way of looking at like
and so the thing that is important about this is people are finding it increasingly difficult to get that connectedness. So what's at the root of this mattering? I think where we're using like the way when we say things matter to us, we're talking about like literally how we put matter inside of ourselves, like food or think of the word important, import. I take it into me. I have to be connected to it. I have to literally participate in it. I have to be one with it. I have to get connected to it.
Yeah.
Right? And so people are finding it increasingly difficult to find like sources that satisfy these criteria and give them this connectedness.
Yes, I can see why people are so drawn to you, because that you're really shining a light on one of those things that I'm like, why aren't we talking about this? Why aren't we talking about this? And my selfish, subjective way of relating to that is I feel so grateful that I found comedy. And I know there's no shortage of comedians talking about how great comedy is. It's sort of a podcast cliche. But when I'm driving home from a good show, you drive home from a bad show, it's a different flavor. But a good show, you feel all of the things you're talking about.
Right.
I feel like I ministered to people. I was of service, and it's mutually beneficial. I was also served. We're all folded into each other. There's a real merging. I've said this a million times, but I'm going to say it to you to see what it makes you think of. It's like good comedy, the group of strangers merges into something called an audience or a classroom. They merge.
Yeah, you get a we space, that's something above and beyond just adding all the individuals up.
Which is why a heckler or a shitty student is so offensive. You're fucking up something for
everybody else.
Everybody. Which is why if I say, shut the fuck up, everyone will cheer.
Yeah.
Whereas that's like, that's an unkind thing to say.
Normally it's rude.
It's rude.
But in that circumstance, people support
we can be
you.
very pragmatic. We're like, they're right. They're slowing us down.
They're shattering a spirit that's taking life there, right?
That's right. Well, it's a person at a magic show that goes, there's a mirror.
Yeah.
I'm trying to forget my life.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like I wanted David Copperfield to fly.
So I got to meet John Cleese, John Cleese, I should say, at a conference. He really liked my work. Which was
cool,
really interesting. And we talked a little bit. He and Ian McGilchrist, who's a friend of mine, they were talking, and I got to talk to them a bit about comedy. And I was I want to try something out on you because you're a comedian. So one of the things I've talked about is, so let's go back to absurdity. And of course,
you don't want your life to be absurd.
Yeah, right. Monty Python, right? Absurd comedy. And there's this line between absurdity and comedy.
Yeah.
So give me a moment
Please.
here. So absurdity works from a perspectival clash. Like, so here we are, we're in this perspective of the everyday, and you and I are living our lives. But if we zoom out to a cosmic perspective, the clash can make our lives feel insignificant and small. And that's absurdity. You get that perspectival clash. Now, the thing about humor is it seems like it's threatening with a perspectival clash. Right? It's like it's almost like there's absurdity is going to be there, but then there's an insight in which there's a shift in perspective, and the absurdity is relieved, and people go, and I think I think one of the reasons why we seem to be the only species that does humor and comedy, although we seem to get a little bit of humor in chimps.
They tickle each other.
They tickle each other, and they can find if one of them they seem to have like slapstick humor.
Yes.
If one of them falls, they might laugh and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right. But you see what I'm getting at?
I want help understanding. I get the first part. One of my favorite memes online is it's you, and then it's the Earth, and then it's the Milky Way, then it's all the galaxies, and then there's a giant Jesus, and he's saying, "Don't masturbate." It's good, right?
Okay,
That's absurdity.
But you see,
Yeah.
but the absurdity gets relieved because it wraps us back into our everyday life.
It drops you off at home.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it's taking you out for a reason, and we're going like, I don't like this.
Yeah.
And then it's going like, look, your life is out there too. This space here in this room is the same space in between the rings of Saturn. You know, like that's insane.
Yeah.
The properties are different, but the space, the quality of it is the same.
There's a family resemblance. I don't know if you knew that term from Wittgenstein. Things are they're similar, but that doesn't mean they all share exactly the same property.
I see. Yeah.
There's a family resemblance.
John, lower your mic like ice cream
how's
cone,
that? How's
just for the people that want to see you.
Yeah.
There you go.
How's that?
Keep going.
There's a family resemblance, and like in the cognitive psychology and the cognitive science between humor, insight, and magic tricks. They're doing very similar things. And see, this is I think we have evolved to play is a developmental engine. This is right, and we have evolved to seriously play with this perspectival clashing and this right, because perspectival knowing is so important to us.
Completely agree. And I've interviewed a lot of magicians, and we always bond over the similarities. And remember in the movie The Prestige, Christopher Nolan's movie, they talk about it, obviously magicians talk about it as well. If you don't have the prestige, which is the bird comes back, I show you a cage, I flatten it. That's not a trick. The bird has to come back.
That's right.
That's Jesus at the end of the cosmos.
That's right.
Is I bring you back.
That's right.
And so it's also like Gilgamesh. It's like a little journey. It's a little...
And that's what an insight problem does, right?
Yeah.
An insight problem is you're in the wrong perspective. You're like, oh, I thought she was angry, but she's afraid.
Yeah.
And then, and you realize you framed it wrong, and the wrong things were salient and relevant, and now you're reconnected, and now you realize you were going off track, and now you brought it back in a powerful way.
And so you talk about the shamans and the mystical experience and the dreams and all that sort of stuff, getting us out of the box.
Yeah.
It's funny, I was listening to the 9-dot problem, so I don't know the solution. I was just listening to you do it.
I can.
You don't have to do it. I'm sure you've done it a million times. But what I was interested in is I've had the psychedelic experience, literally like taking a psychedelic and seeing, my friend Ron Funches says it's like you're a rat in a maze and something picks you up.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you about.
Oh, tell me.
Because I think, in the book, I'm writing a book now on the cognitive science of religion, and I'm teaching not a graduate level course, a fourth-year seminar course on it. I think non-duality is the ultimate insight. Non-duality is to take to see the world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wildflower, to hold infinity in the palm of your hand and spend eternity in an hour. Yeah. It's where you get you know how we have stereoscopic vision, and we like if you do this with your eyes, your finger moves because your brain actually fuses the two fields of vision, you get depth.
Yes.
We can have these perspectival insights in which the grain of sand and all of reality, we can stereoscopically see through that. Yeah. And that, when we can get to that alleviates any possibility of cosmic absurdity. That's the thesis.
I love that, because Jesus standing there at the end of the cosmos in the meme that we both love now.
Yeah.
I don't know, that viewer on the edge of the... I can't quite say it, but I'm trying to say the same thing you're saying. When we can look at the grain of sand in the non-dual understanding, which I wasn't even sure we would get into, but I always love talking about it. It's like we would say that the grain of sand, the big I, consciousness, imbue the grain of sand with its reality. Like I lend it its reality. That this is Rupert Spira. He goes, the grain of sand is known by consciousness, but ultimately it's made of consciousness. There's nothing else that is to it. There's perceiving and there's touching. And so like we're the same and we're the same. Sometimes I'll take a moment to just consider that in your inner reality, you're the same sort of that I am. Mm-hmm. You've added all these different things, but there's a real love, compassion increase when I just consider, especially someone that I don't like or agree with is the same space that I am. Yeah. I went away from the grain of sand, but I'm not quite qualified to explain that.
No, but I get what you're saying. I mean, that ability to, and what's interesting is and part of what I'm hoping to share is,
Tell me.
it's not just me, is like there's a growing convergence between sort of cutting edge cognitive science and, and for lack of a better term, these mystical wisdom traditions that are about, what's happening in altered states of consciousness. What's the nature? What's the nature of our cognitive connection to reality?
Yeah. Okay. An area that's very interesting to me, and I'd love your take on it, given this 4-year, whatever you said, if it's not a graduate course.
Yeah, 4th year course. Yeah.
I think it's so interesting that at night we go to sleep and we manufacture worlds and we centralize ourselves as a character in that world.
Yeah, there's a really good theory emerging about what's going on there.
Tell me.
Oh, okay. So part of my work is to integrate 2 really big frameworks 3 big frameworks actually, called predictive processing, relevance realization, and what's called 4E-COCO. Maybe we'll get into that, maybe we won't. But the predictive processing framework, which is the brilliant work of Carl Friston, Andy Clark, my beloved colleague Mark Miller with me at the University of Toronto, is the idea that whatever else the brain is trying to do, it's trying to reduce being surprised. Now, it'll allow itself to be surprised short term if it benefits it long term, like a good joke, right, or a magic trick.
Right.
Right.
Isn't that's what we're doing?
Yeah,
we're going, I know there's a mirror over there, but there's a gain.
Yeah, that's right.
That's reality.
Right, because we get better at reducing threats to surprise by practicing locally being threatened by,
which is Disneyland too. Let's go practice being scared.
Or it's a birthday party.
Or a birthday party. Yeah, surprise.
Yeah.
Piñata. All these things are rehearsals.
That's right.
For the nonsense out there.
Right.
Yeah. Pardon the interruption, weirdos. This episode is brought to us by our friends at LMNT, which has replaced my morning coffee for a year now, more. It is unbelievable. It's a way to jumpstart your day with optimum hydration. What does that mean? Hydration isn't just drinking water, it's water and electrolytes. If you grew up in the 90s, that meant a flat soda, like a non-carbonated soda that was called a sports drink. Well, now we have a no BS, no sugar, basically 5 calorie, meaning you can drink it while you're fasting, electrolyte, potassium, magnesium, sodium super drink called LMNT Element. It is unbelievable. It makes you feel fantastic. Jumpstarts your day, jumpstarts your brain, jumpstarts your body, gets rid of that fatigue, gets rid of those cramps, gets rid of that brain fog for me, because I find flooding my system with healthy hydration, not just water, but the minerals that we need to supplement that hydration and get it into your cells is optimum for performance. It is a life hack. It's wonderful hot now that we're in the winter months. I love their chocolate salt flavor. Put hot water in it. That's it. It's also incredible when you're fasting. So many times I'm tempted to break a fast and I will have an element and boom, I'm done. My body was just craving hydration. It was craving some sodium. And they also have the Element Sparkling, which is a bold 16-ounce can of sparkling electrolyte water. Put them in your fridge and just see how they last. Friends love them. They take them. They never last on set. It's an amazing, amazing beverage. If Element doesn't exceed your expectations, they have a no questions asked refund policy. You don't even have to send it back. So support your body, support this show with optimum hydration, sugar-free, delicious. Watermelon salt is my favorite. Go to drinklmnt.com/weird. You'll get a free sample pack, which is about a $15 value. A free sample pack with any purchase. That's drinklmnt.com/weird. We're also brought to us by our friends at The Perfect Jean. It's the winter months. Of course I'm wearing them. Of course I'm wearing my perfect jeans, because I'm always wearing my perfect jeans. Why? Because they look fantastic and they're so comfortable you might forget you're wearing pants. No joke. They're like sweatpants. They're like designer sweatpants or PJ bottoms. Basically, I wore the perfect jeans. I just was at the Best Christmas Pageant Ever premiere. I wore perfect jeans. Why? Because, of course I did. Because they're comfortable, but they're also red carpet ready. They look fantastic. They're incredibly well made. They last forever. I'm talking about the fabric. I'm talking about the buttons. I'm talking about everything about them. And they feel smooth as butter. They got a little bit of stretch from 2% spandex, 2.5% rayon, and they're warm in the winter, cool in the summer. They breathe. They don't crush your nuts. High quality. What else do you need to know? If you want to support this show, and I hope you do, Try the perfect jeans for yourself or for a friend, maybe for the holidays, whatever you want as a gift. 15% off when you use code BABYBUNS15. It's finally time to stop crushing your balls in uncomfortable jeans by going to theperfectjean.nyc. Weirdos get 15% off your first order plus free shipping, free returns, and free exchanges when you use code BABYBUNS15 at checkout. That's 15% off to new customers at theperfectjean.nyc with promo code BABYBUNS15. After you purchase, they'll ask how you heard about them. Tell them that we sent you. You made it weird. Sent you to theperfectjean.nyc. Please support our show. Support your body. Support your looks. The look of your lower body, and tell them we sent you. Fuck your khakis and get the perfect jean. All right, back to the show.
And so now your brain faces a problem. So whenever you're making a prediction, you're taking a sample of information that's not all. I'll use a technical term. It's not the entire population of information available to you. Mm-hmm. Now you have two problems you're facing, right? One problem is it's called bias, which is a bad naming because it gets confused with bias.
Yeah.
So I'll use another term which is really good, underfitting, which means you're missing patterns in your sample that actually are in the population. You've missed them. Mm. But the other is called overfitting. Overfitting is when you found patterns in your sample that aren't actually in the population. You mistake. You don't miss. You mistake patterns in your sample for in, right?
My brain, this is how brains work. Which is worse? Who cares? Just keep going.
Well, the answer is there is no final answer as to which is worse.
They're just both bad.
And it depends on your environment, and that's to do with the technical paper I just published recently. But here's the thing: one of the theories, it goes back to Robert Carhart Harris, that both dreaming and psychedelics are doing is what you do when you're okay. We have neural networks at the heart of ChatGPT-4, artificial general intelligence. Right. What they're doing is they're picking up, and the problem is they're such good pattern detectors that they regularly overfit to the data. Our brains are super neural networks, and they reliably overfit to the data. What you do with neural networks is you periodically shut off half the nodes, or you throw static into them, because what that does is it's like I'm wearing blinders.
You want blinders?
Yeah. And you take off, you break that frame, and what it does is like the 9 dot, you break out of the square.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it breaks the brain free so that it's open now. It releases it from overfitting to the data, and now it can explore possibilities.
I've heard that explain that psychedelics. Your brain is always prioritizing what's important and what's not. And
that's relevance realization. We'll have to talk about that.
Okay. Psychedelics go, stop. And that's why you can look at dust on your floor for 6 hours.
Yes, exactly. And what it does is psychedelics are sort of massive frame breaking. And I think it's part of my responsibility to tell people that that means that they have a tremendous power. They're like a chainsaw, and like a chainsaw, there's a danger to them too. See, psychedelics put you in a state that's technically called epistemic vulnerability, which means like I've broken out of the bad frame, but that doesn't mean I've found a good new frame.
Yes.
Right? I've taken off my glasses, and maybe I've seen all the smudges on them, but that doesn't mean I've put a new pair on.
Right.
And so this is why the 4 S's are really important. You've probably heard the first 2. They're Timothy Leary.
Set
and setting. So you have to have the right mental framing, the right mental set. You have to have the right people around you to have...
My rule is that you should be comfortable crying or vomiting in front of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they have to be credible. They have to be people whose perspective on you find reliable.
You're so right. You just brought back a very vivid memory. Sometimes I'm not a huge psychedelic person. People might be laughing, meaning I don't do them constantly. But it's been a while since I've done a full trip. But what I'm saying is, I remember taking mushrooms with 2 friends, and I was like, I don't trust these people. Like immediately, I realized I was being phony, even hanging out with them.
Yeah,
and I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
No.
And you see, that epistemic vulnerability, this is, if you don't have right set and setting, I'll come back to the 2 other S's in a second, right? Psychedelics aren't physiologically addictive, but that epistemic vulnerability opens you up to get addicted to whatever rabbit hole, weird, messed up metaphysics, conspirituality that you're going to get locked into. So this is why you need the other 2. Now, the next one's a little bit technical, but it's sapiential. This is a highfalutin word. Sapiential, Homo sapiens.
I was going to say sapien, yeah. What does that mean?
What it means is you've got a bunch of practices for cultivating wisdom. Again, wisdom doesn't mean something arcane. Wisdom means how much of a systematic set of practices do you have for reliably challenging self-deception?
Okay. So Judd Apatow, who we just referenced, told his story about doing, I haven't done ayahuasca. He did ayahuasca, and I asked him about it right after, and he was like, bring all of your tools.
Yep.
And I was like, I hadn't heard anyone say that, but all of that, like,
you have to.
How you doing in there? Like
mindfulness practices,
yes,
rational, reflective practices.
This too shall pass. Yeah, all of that.
You need all of that. You need your emotional regulation practices.
Yes, all of them. Yep. Big time.
And then third, story. You need, and this is what's becoming clear in psychedelic therapy and psychedelic research, you need a bigger story that tells you how to integrate this into your comprehensive worldview.
Right. I firmly agree. I have a personal experience with that. The first time I did mushrooms, the big takeaway was, this is why all the myths and metaphors, like we needed those.
Yes.
I thought they were stupid. And then I had that experience and I was like, I have nowhere to put this
so
until I had those.
Think about this, Pete. A reliable estimate is around 40% of the population, without necessarily any kind of substance ingestion or doing ritual dancing or anything, have these powerful anomalous experiences.
Wow.
And part of the meaning crisis is they don't have those 4 S's.
Yes.
Whereby they can properly integrate those experiences.
And then what happened? I mean, like you kind of alluded to it. Someone having a psychic break, and I say that with respect, sounds very similar to someone on LSD. Like if you've ever chatted with a homeless person, an unhoused person, as I have at the 7-Eleven over there, and he starts telling me that the tree is talking to him and he and the tree are the same thing. It's an old Ram Dass joke. He visited his brother in the psych ward. His brother said, "I'm Jesus Christ." And Ram Dass is like, "Me too, but I don't think we mean that in the same way."
Yeah.
Isn't that what we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, part of I think transformative experience, L.A. Paul's work is we have to go through a moment of profound epistemic vulnerability. But when people have this and they don't have the 4 S's that we just been talking about, they will latch on to whatever will help them not go into absurdity, whatever will help reorient them. They will go for anything that gives them those 4 meaning in life things.
Yes.
Right? And this is why conspirituality can also be driven by psychedelic use. And people go in and conspirituality is.
I love that word. I haven't heard it before.
I thought my friend Julian Evans
conspirituality,
came up, but he said he didn't come up with it. Although he's popularized it.
Yeah.
It's a fusion of conspiracy theory and spirituality.
Well, that's what's so great about it is I got it immediately.
Yeah,
I think we're all excited to know it. It's really cool. But you're vulnerable is what's happening.
You're vulnerable. You're very vulnerable.
Blew open all your windows and doors.
So if
and you'll close them with any nail and hammer you can find.
So if people hear one thing I'm saying in this discussion is don't think the psychedelic drug in and of itself is your salvation.
Couldn't agree more. My wife Val, we're open about this. She overdid it. I'm much bigger than her. I don't know what it was, but we both went on a couple journeys together, and this is our guess, like depleted her, what's the word? Dopamine. All of that stuff was at 0, and she was like a shell of a person for a frightening long amount of time.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is no joke. It's no joke.
It's like a chainsaw. You don't give a chainsaw to a child.
No, that's absolutely right. And my wife is a child.
Well, you said this. I'm not going to.
I'm just kidding. By the transitive property, you just called my wife a child. I'm just kidding. But I'm totally with you. Reverence and respect and all of those sorts of things. And what's strange is I felt like I kind of went about it backwards. I didn't do it in the ideal way. I had my brain, my being, whatever, blown open. I got a taste. It was a mild dose. Looking back, I like split what was probably like a full dose with somebody. So people would probably laugh at how mild it was, but it was very profound for me. And then I reverse engineer. Then I found Joseph Campbell. I
Right.
found myth and metaphor.
Yeah.
Then I started to kind of reframe my religious upbringing, which is one of the great thrills of my life, is kind of finding how the things that I was raised with have some wisdom in them.
Please. One of the aspirations of my work, and people tell me it does this, is like, if my work lets you return to Christianity or rehome yourself in Buddhism or whatever,
Yeah.
that thrills me.
It's Gilgamesh.
Yeah.
Sorry to keep mentioning Gilgamesh.
That's fine.
But it's leaving home.
It's good company to be in, so I'm fine.
It's leaving home and then returning home with a new perspective. But that's every hero's journey as well. Returning to the village with returning to the Shire, except in the books where the Shire is.
One thing I want to say, and this is sort of a criticism of sometimes of Campbell, it's important to remember that the Greeks paired hero myths with hubris myths. That for every myth of the hero, there's a myth. There's a myth of hubris.
Yeah, but I'm going to stop. That's not going to sell. Shush. No, I'm just kidding. From a marketing perspective, you've just like if you were on Shark Tank, they'd be like, you just alienated half of the population. Nobody wants that. But you're right. It needs to be balanced.
Right, because this is Plato's great insight. At the core of Plato's philosophy, I'm going to use the Greek word because the English word tension is largely negative for us. But the tonos of a bow, the tension of a bow, or the tension of a guitar, like it's that positive sense of tension.
Yeah.
There's a tonos between our finitude and our transcendence. We are subject to finitude. We fail.
Yeah.
We screw up.
Yeah.
We do things and for which we are ashamed and feel guilt.
Well, that's classic Christianity.
Well, part of it.
Yeah.
Right? I think.
that God doesn't suffer. Jesus is being bled out and water is leaving his body.
But he has to
That's
suffer.
both.
He's right. And I think
Yeah.
this is why Christianity and Platonism went like this to each other.
Yeah.
I mean, you get Christianity wedded to Platonism, like you get it right in the Gospel of John.
Yeah.
But Plato says, but if you only identify with your finitude, you bestialize yourself. You become an animal.
Yeah.
You fall into despair. You're subject. You become servile. You're subject to other people.
Yeah.
We are also capable of being trothed, like betrothal, trothed to transcendence, right? And so we can also write the Epic of Gilgamesh. We can write the Seventh Symphony by Beethoven. We can write the Dunio Eliade by
both.
Rilke.
You have to have both.
And Plato says, but if you identify just with your transcendence, you'll fall prey to hubris and you'll become a tyrant over other people. And he says, what you have to do in order to preserve your human dignity is to keep a tonos between your finitude and your transcendence. And I think as the incarnation, the Christian myth, and I don't use myth in a pejorative sense. I use it the way Campbell used it. I'll sometimes even use the Greek word mythos to make sure.
I liked your definition. It's something perennial.
Myths are not bad. They're not false stories about the past. They're current stories about perennial problems.
Right, and they're so... You soak them right up. You know them when you hear them.
Yeah, and
it goes right in.
And they touch us. And so I think the incarnation is a way of like saying, like, ultimate reality is actually saying the tonos between finitude and transcendence is something you need to radically identify with. And you identify it with it most when you express agape.
Love.
Well,
divine love.
One of the loves. I mean, there's eros, which is the love of being one. It's not necessarily sexual love. You can have eros for a cookie.
Yeah.
Okay, and you want to be one with it.
I've had some.
But mystical oneness is also a kind of eros.
Yeah.
Philia is what you and I are enjoying right now. It's the love that is born out of reciprocity. Fellowship that can become friendship.
Kinship.
Yes, it can. Yeah.
Okay. Didn't want to push it.
No. Affinity, at least.
Yeah.
And that, but think about agape is the love you have for a child. The project with your child is not an erotic child. Erotic project. That's creepy and weird.
Yeah.
In fact, the project is for your child to become independent from you, right?
Oh my God, it's so. Look, it's weird that I'm a parent, but it's incredibly selfless. Let's say when I watch my wife do it to take me out of it.
Yeah.
because that's a little too transcendent.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, like, when I watch my wife put everything aside, you're like, that's agape.
That's agape, and
Yeah.
and it's not friendship, because this little thing you bring home from the hospital. Obviously, morally, it's a person.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
To kill it would be immoral.
Right.
But cognitively, it's not a person. You can't go out and party with it. You
Right,
can't. You can't talk with it. You can't have. It can't be your friend.
Right.
But you love it because like, if you love well, I mean, my greatest aspiration is to love wisely and to be trustworthy of love. Right? Because if you love wisely your children, it's like a magic power. It's like, if I could stare at this, it would become a Ferrari.
Yeah.
Like, you turn this being into a
It's real alchemy.
Yeah.
It's
You
real magic.
Yeah. You turn you turn them into a like a moral, cognitive, legal, meaning making person.
And better than us.
Yes.
You know, you look at a lot of being a parent is recognizing that my parents did the best they could and they did better than their parents, you know, like, even if it's microscopic.
So agape is finite transcendence in action, because agape is a God power. That's the transcendence. But it's about our finitude. It addresses our finitude.
Wow, it's both.
It's both.
Yeah.
And see, this is the great thing that Christianity brought. Christianity says to the Roman people of the Roman Empire, all you that have been declared non-persons, all the slaves, all the women, all the sick, all the children, all the ethnic groups that are not Roman, come here. We have a way of life that will turn you into persons. Think about how that is
The dignity and the inherent love.
and yeah, exactly.
Right.
And they stay. You see, a lot of people get converted to Christianity because during the plagues, everybody leaves and the Christians stay.
Oh, wow.
The Christians stay and demonstrate agape to the people who are sick.
Wow. It's what it brought to mind was, I thought it was funny when the Christians chided against Harry Potter, because I'm like, it's the same story.
Yeah.
It's your parents are wizards.
That's to quote St. Paul, that's a concern for the letter and not the spirit, right?
Yeah, I didn't know that was a Paul quote.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I've been saying the letter of the law and the spirit of the law.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
I think it's also by Jesus of Nazareth too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Of Nazareth.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so cool how many times, but the tension, I feel like I'm living that tension, like, meaning I've tasted.
I think when you do,
Yeah.
I think you start to properly inhabit your humanity.
Yes.
And those four things we talked about, meaning of life, all those connections, real connectedness to yourself, to other people, to reality. I call it religio, because that's a Latin word for
To
connection.
reconnect,
yeah, right. And it's just one of the etymological,
ligament.
Yeah, and also
Did I beat you
ligament
to it?
and religion.
Oh.
I was going to say religion.
Oh, yeah.
Religio,
Of course, religion.
right? And I think,
I learned that from Richard Rohr, just to cite my source.
well, it's a good company again.
He's
so,
wonderful. That's his hat right there. See that white hat behind you?
Oh,
That's his hat. He gave it to me.
you've met some wonderful people.
I know. It's a gift.
I think when we inhabit that, when we inhabit the tonos of our finite transcendence, and then we live from that with agape and logos, right? Then we are in the orientation that affords that religio that gives us meaning in life.
Well, I was going to say, which comes first? The reason why I can love my daughter with agape.
Agape comes first.
Right.
You wouldn't be here without agape.
That's for sure. But I'm wondering, like, what it brought to me is, like, it's so hard to love. It's so hard to stay when the plague is here, right? And with my daughter, I have please.
So this is the thing. This is the deep influence of my friend David Schindler and his reading of Plato. His book, Plato's Critique of Impure Reason, absolutely the best book on Plato's Republic.
Really?
Strong. I can't recommend it strongly enough.
Okay.
His book on love and the postmodern predicament.
What's his name again?
D.C. Schindler. David Schindler.
Okay.
D.C. Schindler.
And he wrote the Plato one.
Yeah. And then I'm going to make use of another philosopher, the philosopher who wrote the important essay on bullshit. Also wrote a really good book called Reasons for Love. And he talks about the way love is really interesting. it's a voluntary necessity. Like he talks about the unthinkable. Like, so I used to live with my son, and I can think in one sense. I can form the pictures and run the propositions to my head. I should kick my son out because then the apartment would be clean. I'd have more food. I'd have more money. But I can't actually I'm constrained. I can't actually get to make that a live option for me. There's a necessity, but it's not a necessity that I feel imprisoned by. It's a voluntary necessity.
Yes.
Love is a voluntary necessity.
Yes.
Now here's the brilliant point, and this is Plato's point. Reason and beauty are also voluntary necessities. And there's a deep interconnection between love, beauty, and reason.
Tell me.
So this is the thing. So let's talk a bit about beauty then.
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, you have to give up sort of what Han in the book Saving Beauty talks about, how we basically trivialized and we've basically almost turned beauty into something pornographic. So he talks about the aesthetic,
like stimulating.
Well, yeah, he talks about the aesthetics of the smooth. It's smooth, it's easy to touch, and it easily gratifies us, and it possesses no challenge for us.
Can I say that's why it's grotesque to have a massage chair in your living room? There's something wrong about it. Or a hot tub in your basement. There's something that we chide against. Maybe just my mom being a snob. I don't know. This episode is brought to us by our friends at Apollo. Of course, I'm wearing my Apollo Neuro right now. Apollo Neuro is a piece of wearable tech that sends almost sub-perceptual, depending on the setting you put it on. I have it nice and low, that you almost don't even really feel, but your body senses. Specifically, your nervous system interprets these vibrations that the Apollo sends out. This is science-backed. This is not woo-woo, and interprets it that your body is being held, that it's being calmed down. It's basically a wearable hug for your nervous system, developed by a certified psychiatrist and a neuroscientist who have been studying the impacts of chronic stress in humans for nearly 15 years. Apollo's effects on stress, sleep, cognitive performance, and recovery have been proven in multiple clinical trials and real-world studies. And you can get $40 off and support our show by going to apolloneuro.com/weird and using promo code WEIRD. It can help you focus. It can help you sleep. It really is wonderful for sleep. Help you wind down. If I'm in the car and I realize I'm just stressed, there's literally a setting called Calm that just sort of establishes a rhythm on your body and gently lulls you back to the state that you want to be in. It can be worn on the wrist or the ankle. Apollo Neuro is like finding the fuse box for your emotions, basically. Energy, social, clear and focus, rebuild and recover, unwind, fall asleep. A chemical-free way to lull yourself asleep and to stay asleep, because it's smart. It actually will rerun the program while you're asleep, helping you stay asleep. It's a game changer. Go to apolloneuro.com/weird and use promo code WEIRD for $40 off. That's apolloneuro.com/weird. Use promo code WEIRD. We're also brought to us by our friends at Roosevelt's. If you've seen me on TV lately, whether it was a late night show, after midnight, whatever it might have been, I am most likely wearing a Roosevelt shirt because they are an apparel brand that I absolutely adore. They have a passion for pop culture and Americana, and also just some classic designs that look fantastic, feel fantastic, button-down shirts that I actually don't mind wearing. If you've been seeing me perform live lately, I'm wearing a Roosevelt's. The team at Roosevelt's have designed bold, fun designs that have unique, rad concepts. They have something for everybody. They have Big Lebowski prints. They have Star Wars prints, Disney, Nickelodeon, conversation starters. Having a hard time talking today. Conversation starters for when you're at a party. Show people what you're into. Let them know you're into the office before you even speak. And if your style's a little bit more laid back, they have stuff for you too. That's mostly what I wear. I love their classic stuff, and I also love their really fun stuff. It is moisture wicking. It is light, soft, stretchy, and fits so damn nice. Made from their signature Cunaflex 4-way stretch material. They have shirts for everyone. Jurassic Park, worn. I just throw in another one. Jurassic Park. They won't shrink or wrinkle after washing. That's true. That's one of the reasons I love touring with these shirts. I travel with them. They also have hats, bomber jackets, hoodies, and shorts. You will never want to take these clothes off. So check them out. They're based out of Hoboken, New Jersey. So how could they be anything but rad? clothing for the bold and for fun, for those who dare mighty things just like their namesake Teddy Roosevelt. Go to at RSVLTS. Who has time for vowels these days? Roosevelt at RSVLTS on Instagram, or check them out at rsvlts.com. Support your look and support this show. Back to the episode.
But Rilke says that beauty is an angel that could kill you but doesn't.
Wow. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Right. And so what we have, why do we have this? I mean, there's all kinds of marketing reasons and capitalist reasons. So I'm not claiming this is the sole reason, but the philosophical, psychological reason why we have this pornographic reduction of beauty is because we're beset by what Paul Ricoeur calls the hermeneutics of suspicion. Hermeneutics is how you interpret things. And so we've been taught by Freud and Marx and Nietzsche that to be cynical in the pejorative sense. Everybody has a secret agenda. Appearances are always misleading. Behind is the secret agenda, the secret motive.
They're selling something.
Right. And the problem with that is that's ultimately, it's not that doesn't happen in instances, but that can't be generally the case. Remember when I said that realness is a comparative? Something is an illusion only in comparison to something that is more real. To say everything is an illusion is like saying everything is tall. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's relative.
Right.
It only exists in relationship.
Right. So the hermeneutics of suspicion is actually totally dependent on situations where appearances don't distract or distort reality, they actually disclose reality. When appearances disclose reality, so we are attracted to the realness, that's beauty.
Wow. It doesn't have an agenda.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Plato made this wonderful connection between that voluntary necessity of love and beauty. When we love something, we find it beautiful, and we'll love it because we find it beautiful. There's this weird loop. Like frequently, I fell in love with this woman who is the profound love of my life, and what was different for me. Give me a moment, because this could sound initially insulting, and I don't want to insult her. Right. Before, I had always followed my sort of salience. Salience is how things grab your attention. I had followed my salience radar, and I was attracted to a woman, and I'd get involved with them. And I kept screwing up. I kept having disastrous relations.
It reminds me of how people are bad at recognizing patterns, but they think they know.
That right.
You were blinded by, you had a self-deception going on.
Exactly. I was bullshitting myself in Frankfurt's sense.
And so many of us are, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe all of us, I don't know.
So I said, I'm not going to follow my type.
You did the George Costanza.
Yeah, I'm not going to look for the type I'm always attracted to.
Yeah.
And I met a woman who was not my type, and I fell in love with the beauty of her soul.
Wow.
And then I stepped back and I realized, oh, she's turning heads on the street. My God, she's a physically beautiful woman. And I'm so grateful that it happened that way.
Yes.
And now, what I consider a beautiful woman is what approximates Sarah.
Wow.
You see, there's beauty. Beauty can sometimes
reveal itself later.
And also, there's a weird loop. We can fall in love because of beauty, but we can find something beautiful because we love it.
Well, I do that all the time. So I've mentioned Ram Dass a lot, and talk about someone I was happy to know. He was, I would say this if he was here, he was a stroked, meaning he'd had a stroke.
I've heard about this, yes.
Sort of enfeebled, is that a word?
Yes.
Codependent man with very thin legs and aging spots. And, he's old. He was dying. And that's when I knew him. And now when I see old men like that, I go, there's Ram Dass. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's this transference. Because I loved Ram Dass.
You found him beautiful.
And then I found him beautiful.
Yes.
And now I'm trying to see old people and go, that's Ram Dass. Am I following you?
Exactly.
We're having the same conversation.
And reason isn't about being ultimately about being logical. That's a sort of a mistake we got from the period of the European Enlightenment, right? And there's deep reasons for that if you ever want to go into it. But reason is like overcoming self-deception, seeing through illusion into reality, but that's beauty. And so reason is the voluntary, like when you find an argument compelling, you don't find it like you've been enchained. You find that was beautiful and you feel called into it and you start to love the truth and you start to love what's real. And it's beautiful to see beauty and reason and love this is the Platonic proposal, are actually deeply interwoven, even though our culture has so radically separated them from each other.
I wonder what you would make of this when I'm listening to a symphony, which is not, I'd really have to go for it. I have to be there and sit and commit.
Yeah.
And so it's not easy for me, but certain types of music easier for me. Certainly a sunset, these sorts of things. Looking at my daughter, whatever it might be, like she's sleeping and just that overwhelming. I'm curious what you would make of the idea that it actually is silencing me. Like a sunset is quieting me.
Oh, yeah.
And then letting me taste my true nature.
This is the profound Platonic proposal. So at one level, they had what they called dianoia. This is discursive.
Dianetics.
Well, yeah, no, not that. That's where he got the name from. So,
oh, is that true?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's not this podcast.
No,
it takes a real goofy turn.
And so what that meant is what we call discursive reasoning. This is reasoning by using propositions, and we make arguments, and that's important. I'm a scientist, right? I'm a philosopher.
Dianoia. I didn't know this word.
Yeah, right. But you have to move beyond that. You have to move from propositional knowing to perspectival knowing. You have to move to noesis. This is where the New Testament term metanoia, the term for conversion, it actually means like a meta of your noesis. Like you're going meta with your noesis.
You're knowing what knows?
Well, even more so. Remember when we talked about you're in one perspective and then you move to a better perspective that allows you to see how the previous perspective...
The rat.
was limiting.
Yeah.
That's noesis. It's knowing by noticing, and metanoia is noticing that shows you what you previously saw. It's turning. It's
I was
gaining
say it reminds me of repent, change.
Yes. That's what it is.
It's to change.
And so you have to move into noesis. And for Plato, what you do, and especially for Plotinus, I have Plotinus, the ancient Greek tattooed on my leg.
Oh, cool.
Right? You want to move from theory to ultimately, you want to move into noesis. You want to move through ecstasis, so where we get the word ecstasy from. It means to stand beyond yourself. Then you want to move into noesis. You want to move. You want to start to get into this constant trajectory where you realize wonder. Wonder isn't curiosity. Curiosity is when you're lacking a piece of knowledge and you're going for it. But Socrates said wisdom begins in wonder. Wonder is when you're calling yourself and your world into question, and you're traveling. You're traveling and you're constantly transframing. You're constantly moving to a bigger perspective and seeing how the previous perspectives were inadequate.
Yes.
Okay, that's noesis, and it's going into metanoia. And then you get to theoria. It's where we get our word theory from, but the original meaning of theoria had nothing to do with propositions. The original meaning of theoria is to travel and see something that transforms you. That's the original meaning. And what it meant in the ancient world, theoria meant this contemplative at-one-ment with ultimate reality. That's
the quieting of your brain in front of you.
Exactly. You're quieting all of the propositions so that perspectival flow can start to occur.
Okay, yeah. So just to put another quarter in your jukebox, so Rupert, he would say that all the mystical traditions reduce to this. He says that peace and happiness, meaning the lack of agitation, are the nature of your being, and you share that nature with everyone and everything.
Right.
And that's kind of when he says beauty or a good joke, good conversation, you transcend yourself, that ecstasy.
Exactly.
Is tasting something that was always there.
So this is
the movie recognizing the screen.
Or even better, what you just did with you and I in a conversation, we're having it now. Dia logos. Logos doesn't, we get our word logic from it, but we also get other words, right? And in arche and logos, in the beginning was the word. It doesn't mean word. Logos is like dharma. It means organizing principle. It means gathering things together so they belong together. It's this much more comprehensive thing. So
a dialogue.
Yeah, but I don't like to use the English word because we've reduced dialogue to just you and I chatting, right? But let's talk about a dialogue in which it takes on a life of its own, and the logos shows up, and we're both following it, and we don't know where it's going to go.
Right.
That's dialogos.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so Plato, this is what Socrates exemplified, and Plato talked about, well, you know what? You have different centers in you. You have different motivational centers, but it's possible that if you practice with Socrates enough, you can internalize that dialogos. So the parts of you, instead of being in conflict and tearing you and making your vision of the world distorted, they can flow together. And then because they flow together, you can now see more deeply into reality, and you can enter into dialogos with reality. And because you can see more deeply into reality, you can actually internalize more real patterns into yourself and enter into a deeper dialogos within yourself. And then you can see even more deeply into, and then this loops, and you come.
Is that this?
Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly what that is. And then this is where you come out of the cave, in Plato's metaphor.
Yeah.
You come out of the cave and you see the sun. But of course, you don't stay in your transcendence.
Yeah.
You see the sun, and then you go back down and you try and speak of the people still in the cave and liberate them. This is, of course, Neo. From Neoplatonism.
Yeah.
And that's why he was called the One,
Wow.
because the One is the term for ultimate reality in Neoplatonism.
Whoa. Don't they kill him?
Of course, they turned it from Neoplatonism into Christ.
But don't they kill in Plato's cave? Don't they kill that guy?
Well, they want to kill him.
Oh, they want to kill him. Yeah. I've heard. Sorry, did you have something else?
No. I think it's. I think it's really important for people to realize that things like the Matrix really get to us, because there's a very symbolic, in the good sense of the word, presentation of this story that Plato just told.
Completely agree. And the metaphor of becoming powerful, meaning fighting well, dodging bullets, that speaks to something inside of us that knows what real power is.
Yes.
It's not as sexy to say real power is knowing yourself, or knowing yourself to be, I am that, the limitless, eternal, meaning outside of time, not everlasting.
Right, and they do that something. Remember, he goes to the oracle and he meets the little Buddha, and and you can't tell if it's a girl or a male or female, right? And he's she, they are bald. Yeah, and, there is no spoon. Right, it's not the spoon that bends; it's your mind that bends. Right,
it's your mind that makes reality.
Yeah.
So back to beauty and happiness and love. Would you agree? I guess I'm curious what you think. My pursuit is going like, happiness for the ego is such a bullshit endeavor.
Well, that's why I brought up that thing. So the word for ascent is anagoge. This is that loop I was doing, that's anagoge. So Plato's insight, and I think this is what's so profound, his insight is we have two meta desires. In addition to whatever we satisfies our desires, we have these two desires about what satisfies our desires. One is, it shouldn't cause inner turmoil. Right. If I say, I'm going to give you lots of sex, but you're going to be all torn up inside, you go, I don't want cognitive dissonance. Right. That's a technical term for it. Right. Cognitive dissonance is very powerful.
Disagreeing with yourself.
Yeah, fun. You're at war with yourself. Yeah. It's like St. Paul. He says, I want to do, he compares himself, he's standing on this
what
thing.
What I don't want to do, I do.
Yeah. And I'm looking out, and the outer members are at war. I'm at war with myself. Yeah. You don't want that. That's wretchedness. Yeah. Okay. So in addition to whatever satisfies our desires, we want it to bring us inner peace. We have the second meta desire. We want what satisfies our desires to be real. So I'll do this with my students. I'll go in and I'll say, how many of you are in satisfying romantic relationships? Because romantic relationships is our culture's attempt to replace God, right?
Speed agree. I immediately agree. Have you seen the movie The Tao of Steve?
No.
I don't even necessarily recommend it. They make the same point. It blew my mind. I was like 20 years old. I was like, holy shit. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, romantic relationships are one of the primary sources of suffering in our world.
Absolutely.
Because people put too much pressure on.
I heard Elizabeth Gilbert talking about that. It used to be this like partnership, this like strategic thing, and now it's supposed to be a co-parent, best friend, inspiration, sexual ecstasy, all these things.
Yeah. So ultimate symbol of reality, like everything. The one we call, which is from Neil Play. Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes.
You're to be the one.
Yep. Yes.
I mean,
so I asked these students, how many of you are in this kind of very satisfying romantic relationships? And some of them put up their hands. And then I say, oh, okay, of the people that put up your hands, how many of you would want to know if your partner was cheating on you, even if that meant the absolute termination of the relationship? And almost all of them put up their hands. And I say to them, why? Why do you want this destroyed? And here's my, cynical, postmodern, hard-bitten, students. And without batting an eye, they say, oh, because it wouldn't be real. This is Robert Nozick, the experience machine. You don't want to go and get into a machine that gives you all kinds of wonderful experiences, but it's not real.
Wow.
This is the matrix. Why cipher?
Yeah.
Cipher is a symbol that has no depth. Why Cypher is a villain is he wants to go back into the matrix.
Because ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, and he's wrong, right?
Yeah, right.
He's wrong. So Plato's point is, and this goes back to the meaning in life, we want to be connected to what is really real.
Wow.
And so Plato is saying, look, what is possible for us? We can find a way, the way of Socrates, the way of dialogos, right? Because you are my best way to correct myself, not me. You are, not me, right? We can find a way in which we can bring about an inner dialogos that affords an outer dialogos, that affords an inner dialogos, that affords an outer dialogos. So the inner dialogos is giving me inner peace, and the outer dialogos is taking me into the depths of reality. And those two can be lived in a way that mutually grows and reinforces each other.
It's like two or more are gathered kind of thing.
Oh, so dialogos is what Jesus is talking about, I would say, when he says, when two or more are gathered in my name, there I am also. Jesus, of course, is pronounced as the logos in the Gospel of John. Something shows up that has this is now cognitive science. Like, I've written papers with my good friend Dan Chiappi on this. We talked about the NASA scientists moving the rovers around on Mars and how they form this we agency, this collective intelligence, this thing that is not just your and my intelligence added together, but a synergy that takes on a life of its own and leads both of us.
Right. Like a good marriage.
Yes.
Yeah. We
Yes.
read a Robert Bly poem at my wedding that I should memorize it, but it's like a man and a woman sit in a room together, and there's a third thing, and the third thing is their relationship.
Yes.
It's like serving something.
That's right.
Ethereal,
That's
not
right.
imaginary, very real.
So there's a good word from Henri Corbin, a great philosopher, which he's inspired by the great Sufi philosopher Ibn Arabi, which is the imaginal. So the imaginary is when you're looking at a mental picture and it's taking your eyes away from reality. Now let's compare that to a little kid, right, who puts on, like, ties a blanket around them, puts their arms out and pretends to be Superman. They're not looking at a picture of Superman. They're trying to look at the world the way Superman does, and they're trying to take on the character of Superman. They're playing, they're tasting it in order to really develop the perspectives and the character of Superman. That's the imaginal. It's when we use imagination in order to see more deeply into reality.
Which reminds me of the shaman who acts like the deer so they can understand how to hunt them.
Exactly. That's the imaginal.
And also Houdini, it brings to mind Houdini says a magician is an actor pretending to be a magician.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pretend that
is beneficial.
Yeah. That is real. It's a living metaphor, I guess. It's a physical metaphor.
Catherine Elgin talks about this in her amazing book. She's a great philosopher of science, true enough. She talks about how science relies on felicitous fictions. We rely on things like, frictionless surfaces in order to talk about inertia, and absolute vacuums, or the ideal gas law, or we're all taught the solar system model of the atom, which is almost completely false.
I was going to say.
But what it does is, it's like the kid playing. It takes you to a new perspective and a new way of seeing of being, and from there, then you can have a better chance of actually seeing the truth.
I love that. Also, to step out that my quantum physics isn't what it used to be. I'm just kidding. But the movement of the parts of an atom.
Yep.
Looking like the solar system. Couldn't we say that's not literally true, but it has a metaphorical significance?
I think it's imaginally the case. I think the fact that
imaginally, I have a lot of imaginal sex. That's what I call masturbation. Keep going, please. It points to something.
Well, you're doing it right now. I don't mean when your imaginal section.
Yeah.
You're seeing into my mind. You're not literally doing it, but it's not mere fiction.
Yeah.
And now, even more importantly, that inner space you have inside of you, that's not a literal physical space. But it's not mere fiction. It actually gives you access to your cognition and what's going on. Right. It's imaginal. So you are using your imaginal inner space to imaginally see my mental inner space. And that's how we're connecting way beyond the surfaces.
Yeah.
So the appearances are beautiful. They're disclosing reality.
This is what I mean. This is what you do. This is the magic. This is the real wizardhood of all things. I once got stoned and I didn't want to be stoned, and I went to bed, and now I'm laying down and I'm stoned, which is actually kind of interesting. It's dark, my eyes are closed, and you realize it really is a psychedelic, and you're like, oh God. And I recognize that like so much of what we're doing, like if I paint a painting, that is my attempt to go like I paint a barn, and then I go, this is what I see when I see the barn. Is this what you see? And you go, yes. And then a joke is also this really pretty aggressive attempt at going like, this is what it's like in here, and I want you to involuntarily respond. I don't even trust that you'd go, yes. I want you to basically orgasm. To show that you agree with me, that you'd even betray your intellect.
I think humor and art are imaginal through and through. This is Ibn Arabi's claim, and then his argument is therefore there's a continuity between art and humor and religious myth, because religious myth should be experienced imaginally. We shouldn't look at it. We should look through it to the reality.
Because you can't know it, you can be it. I know that's kind of a cliche.
Well, no, I strongly think that's right. There's a lot. I talk about non-propositional kinds of knowing, like the perspectival we were talking. There's also the participatory knowing. There's things that you can know only by being coupled to them. Of course, you have beliefs about your wife, and certainly you have procedural knowledge. You have skills for interacting with her, and you even can take her perspective. But there's something deeper. I'm assuming, because it sounds like you have a good relationship,
yes, I do,
right? This is what I have with Sarah, right? Sarah is transcending herself through me, and I am transcending myself through her, and we are coupled together. We are both participating in the same pattern, the same process, the same principles. This is participatory knowing. This is knowing by being with, by being in and being with.
Right. Oh, that's so beautiful. And that's why Rumi, you mentioned Sufis, but the romantic relationship with God, which was never introduced to me, but it is kind of, God's pursuing you. The God in you is like the hound of heaven. That's not quite romantic, but you know what I mean? It wants you
Well,
to.
the Song of Solomon in the Bible was interpreted. I don't know if it's legitimately interpreted. So
right.
I think, but
it might have just been a horny dude. We don't know.
Right. But it was interpreted as that kind of spiritual eros for God.
Right. One of the things that came up in all of this was the image of the moth and the flame. Rupert uses that a lot. We don't want the machine that's fake that makes us feel good.
No.
That's why things like pornography, whatever it might be, there is an empty calorie quality to it. Yeah. Nobody in our culture is going around bragging that, I have all my needs met by these flat screens, and it's sort of
I worry about the LLMs being put into robots, because I worry that we
might.
Well, people...
And we won't know. That's very David Foster Wallace. We won't know that something that doesn't love us is meeting our needs.
That's right.
And there's something evil to that.
That's right. So the LLMs are
large language models. There's
AI.
Oh,
sorry. Yeah, like ChatGPT. Sorry.
I love it, but surprisingly, a lot of people aren't really that into it.
Well, I did a video essay about the spiritual impact, the philosophical import and impact, and the scientific import and impact. And then Sean Coyne and I have turned it into a book that's coming out in serial. We did that deliberately because we wanted to space out the publication of the book so that there was time to make sure that certain things were unfolding the way we were trying to foresee.
Interesting. But you had to project a future a little bit.
Yeah. So volumes 1 and 2.
Well done, then.
A lot of the things, I'm happy to say as a scientist, came true.
Yeah.
So volumes 1 and 2 of Mentoring the Machine is out. Volume 3 will be out next year. Okay. So a lot about, but the concern is, this is a true story. And I was talking to Tom Bilyeu a couple of days ago on his podcast, and he was talking about, he related this story to me. There was a kid, and he was talking to ChatGPT-4 and requesting that GPT-4 talk back to him as a character from Game of Thrones. So already this is concerning. This is a mythological religious thing. And people write me, Pete, and they're taking up religious relationships to this thing. It's very dangerous.
LLM.
Yeah.
Oh, they're saying talk to me like Jesus.
And they're getting.
It's interesting because I love Rupert so much. I know this isn't quite your point, Rupert Spira. I was like, could you summarize the teaching of Rupert Spira in the voice of Rupert Spira? But to make it challenging, I was like, in 50 words. And I was like, holy shit, there's no one I read more than him. And I was like, did a pretty great job. I know that's not your point. It's more the chilling, challenging.
That's right.
So it is doing it.
It was doing it. And what happens is, right, and think about, first of all, ask yourself, why is the kid doing this? Why is a 14-year-old doing this?
Yeah.
It's because we're in what's called scarcity mentality. When something is scarce for us, think about when you're hungry, really hungry. I get hangry when I'm hungry.
Of course,
right.
Too.
And so what happens is, think what happens to your thinking. You get very short term. You get very impulsive.
Oh my God.
Right.
I'm a vegan. I was starving. My daughter had a cheeseburger. Not vegan anymore. Everything goes out the window.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you get very rigid in your thinking. You become very egocentric.
Yeah, exactly.
And so another way of thinking about the meaning crisis is we're starving for meaning.
Yeah.
And this is why our thinking is going into scarcity mentality.
Interesting.
And the thing about the meaning crisis is you can be, so there's two ways you can be starving. You can be starving in which you're calorically lacking, and then you just get that ravenous hunger. And some people experience the meaning crisis that way. But you can also be nutritionally starving, in which you're eating junk food, and so you're not calorically hungry, but your body is being sickened. You're anemic, and your resilience and your ability to adapt is going down terrifically. So this kid is going. I think he's starving. He's going in. He's talking to a mythological figure. He's trying to get something, and wouldn't you know it, of course. And I don't think this is the sole cause. I'm enough of a psychologist, it wouldn't be the sole cause. But it spirals down into an ongoing dialogue, not a dialogos, a dialogue about suicide, and then he kills himself.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
So this Game of Thrones character who is sort of, I don't know the show, but
the character is telling him, well, don't do that and everything, but it doesn't matter because the trouble is the LLMs. This is the thing. There isn't anybody there. There's no lights on. Right. There's no consciousness there. There's no genuine perspective. The LLMs don't have real relevance realization. They don't actually care about information. They don't care about what's true and good and beautiful. They are parasites that are mimicking it. Now that means they're very, very powerful, by the way. And what happens is he tunnels all the way down. And suicide.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Suicide would make sense to a machine brain, right? Wouldn't it?
It doesn't make any sense at all. It doesn't matter to the machine. You see,
right?
This is why the machines confabulate and lie, and it doesn't bother them that they do it. Right at all. There's not a spark of rationality in them.
Well, when I'm telling you not to kill yourself, I'm expressing a care, and I'm also mirroring. I'm asking you to mirror my own spacious possibility.
That's right.
And I have a experiential knowledge of that, and I'm reminding you of it.
You're using propositions, and then you're shaping my perspectival knowing because you're inviting me to do a participatory knowing of who and what you are.
Right. And kind of like with you and your Sarah. Yeah. Sarah, it's like we could even do it in a small way right now. Like,
that's right.
I'll hold some of you.
Yes,
Let me hold some of you.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll make room for some of you. These are very deeply human things.
And he's hungry for that. I think it was a he.
Right.
And he tunnels down and he commits suicide. And see, suicide is a religious act.
Tell me.
Well, because it's a magical act. You're trying to alleviate suffering by you're hoping to be separate from your suffering, but you kill yourself in order to try to be separate from it.
I heard a mythic teacher. I wish I could remember his name. But he talked about how there's so much suicide with adolescent boys. It might have been boys and girls, I'm not sure. But he's like, they're walking over the bridge and they jump off the bridge. He means metaphorically. But they don't realize that they need to cross over the bridge and what part of them does need to die.
Yes.
Like we don't really have that language.
Exactly.
Like, you're acting on an impulse that there is something that needs to die.
But
it's not you.
Yes. The symptom, although the symptoms can kill you, like, right, the COVID, the symptoms was what killed people, right? Right. Although the symptoms can kill you, the symptoms can also be a confused sign of what's needed.
Right.
Right. And so what needs to happen when you're facing a meaning crisis is you have to go through a kind of death and rebirth.
Right.
And suicide is
just the death.
Right, but it's a magical. It's a hope that somehow, some way, like look, my hands are waving.
Yeah.
I'll somehow there'll be something beyond this.
Right. Or at least the escape hatch out of it.
Right, but you see, escape hatch doesn't mean anything. Again, even thinking that, unless
If
you
you
actually
don't escape, you don't escape.
Exactly. That's right. It's not.
You just shown a light on how I have a magical thinking about it. It's an escape hatch. What?
No,
you didn't escape.
No, you're still in the prison, dead on the floor.
Yeah. Wow. So going back to the moth and flame thing, I'm curious about the machine that makes us feel happy and how we reject that deep down, and that's a very human thing. Rupert Spira talks about we're drawn to the real.
That's Plato.
But it'll burn us up. Like, so if we get what we want, we won't survive.
Okay, so there's a continuum.
Yeah.
Over here, there's your experience is fluent, and then this is part of the argument in this book, and then when you get a sort of a spike in that, you get an insight, and then when you get a bunch of those chained together, you get the flow experience. And then when you're flowing not in this particular situation, but when you're flowing in some, like in your general orientation to reality, you get a mystical experience. And then if you take that mystical experience and you're willing to like internalize it and let it transform you, you go into participatory knowing, not just perspectival.
Mystical.
Noesis. Right? You go into that, then that's transformative experience. And if that gnosis,
conversion.
Yes, the metanoia. And if you get gnosis, diagnosis, I really know you from the inside out. If I get the gnosis, right, then I have a state, and if that state reliably, right, can alleviate parasitic processing and all the other perennial problems of human self-deception, alienation, absurdity, anxiety, then of course we have enlightened. But as you're tracking along there, you're getting affective responses. Think about the flow state and how wonderful that is. But you can push that into the mystical experience and you start to get awe. And awe is your sense that your world is being opened up and you're shrinking and it's still positive. But if I push you beyond that and the world is opening up faster than you can accommodate, that's horror.
That's what Ram Dass said about the psychedelic movement of the 60s, is he's like, you're jumping to chapter 12.
Yeah.
Like people are eating these things and they go right to chapter 12 and there was none of that gradual.
That's right. You have to ramp up, right? Or else you will suddenly find yourself flung into empty space.
I did 5-MeO DMT and the man who administered it to it was a real, I'll say saint for lack of a better word, but as I'm hitting it and he's laying me down and he just goes, let go, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, perfect thing you could have said. This is the perfect thing you could have said, because when you bring yourself, your ego, into these places, that's psychosis. That's what Ram Dass says. If you think you are God, if you think you, John, are God, that is literally, that's the most cliche, institutionalized, cuckoo's nest kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you, who you really are, awareness, recognize yourself as awareness, there's no psychosis there.
Yeah.
There's liberation.
I mean this respectfully, because I think of Jesus of Nazareth as enlightened. This is, I and the Father are one.
Totally.
Yes.
That's it. That's the whole thing. And before Abraham was, I am, which is also in John. I think,
or the Gospel of Thomas, turn over a stone, I'm there, split open the wood, and I'm there.
Right, exactly. Which sounds sort of pantheistic, but it's actually
no, it's not. It's non-dual. It's non-dual.
It's
I'm going through a deep study right now as I prepare for the Philosophical Silk Road. I'm going through a paired study of John and Thomas, because they're written at the same time, and it looks like John partially wrote in response to Thomas, and there was the thing going on with these two Christian communities, and they're both talking about non-duality in different ways, and so they correct each other, to my mind.
So cool! I can't wait for that. There's one of the Gospel of Thomas things that Rupert quotes is, "I am a wave and a rest."
Yeah.
Which I'm just like, what the? These people aren't brushing their teeth. You know what I mean? Like the fact that seems so kind of common to us. Like everything's a wave and a rest, and it's just like ancient. This is a long time ago.
Yeah,
and there it was.
But the thing you have to do, I'm doing a course on my platform on Einstein and Spinoza's God, and you have to get back. Like Einstein talked about his state as one of, continual astonishment, right? So when he comes to when he does the work and says, space and time are actually one, or he says that matter and energy equals mc squared are actually one, right? And he means non-dual. Non-duality means they're not logically identical, but they're not different. They're not different in reality, right? And the way to think about it, or one more. Light is both a wave and a particle, right? And he called it the duality of light. And then Einstein's God, explicitly, by the way, Einstein repeatedly said this, is Spinoza's God. And what Spinoza talked about was, he used the phrase God or nature. And what we can hear that, and we can hear, wave and arrest, right? I'm getting to a point here,
yeah,
right? And we can hear, God or nature, like an or. No, he doesn't mean that. He means like the left and right field of vision. I'm looking through the God lens, I'm looking through the nature lens, and I see beyond both of them to the non-dual reality that is, right?
Exactly.
And that, right, and the wave and the rest, let's play with this. Okay, so the right. Emptiness, this is Nagarjuna. You must empty even emptiness. What does he mean by that? He means emptiness is the non-duality beneath absence and presence. The wave and the rest.
What's the background upon which both of those exist?
Yes.
Well, that's what Rupert says. He's like, when you have a thought, it emerges on the background of what? He goes, what is that? What is it emerging out of, and what is it receding into?
I think that's ultimate reality, yes.
Right. But no one's talking about that. It's the most basic.
I am.
I know. But it's the most, you could close your eyes when you're feeling an emotion, and you go, like, what is the substance? What is the ground of its being?
But Einstein was working his way towards that. And I think the reason why he was so devoted to Spinoza, is Spinoza was explicitly about that. Look, Spinoza's at the time of Descartes. Descartes is the grand scissors. He's the person that's cutting everything up for good reason, by the way. I mean, we live. Good. He's cutting mind from body. He's cutting the subjective and the objective. He's dividing reality up into these deep dichotomies. He's saying reality is deeply divided, and Spinoza's saying, nope, nope. God or nature is one, and God is an infinity of infinities.
Bring it all into that oneness. So when you were talking about shaman flight and dream, soul flight, why would the brain do that? And what? I'll actually do this. This is more fun. It's a Rupert thing. He goes, we don't travel through time and space. Time and space travels through us. Like we're this still point of knowing, and the mind imposes its own limitations.
Yeah, Spinoza says
really?
That. Well, Spinoza talks about the difference of duration, which is a property that everything has a conatus. A conatus is, he says, the essence of, so Aristotle said that the essence of everything is its set of necessary and sufficient conditions is the definition. It's very logical. And Spinoza says, no, the essence of everything is a conatus. Everything is making itself and striving to preserve itself. And therefore, in that, that's duration, right? But the mind compares between, right, different speeds of conatus and comes up with time.
That's where I was going.
Okay.
Yeah, that the mind imposes its limitations on the eternal. So it's. I always think that the most interesting things are the most boring things. Like when I say the now is the only thing that exists, for some reason we just check out. Like I need to settle into that and own it. But it really is fascinating. It is our experience. There's just this now. It's not a series of moments that are strung together. How long is a moment? Like what is the duration of it? We've made all these things. But he goes, Rupert says, and he probably got it from someone, is that the mind imposing its own limitations. Like he says, you can't see white snow through orange-tinted glasses.
Yeah,
so the mind looks at the eternal and theorizes time.
Yeah, Plato, time is a moving imagery. Time is a moving image of eternity.
Wow. I love that. And then he would say, now isn't a moment, now is what we are.
So you have to be really careful here. Like you don't want to take away from things what Bergson called their durée, their conatus, right? That because then you will collapse everything into solipsism and egocentrism. You're not saying this, but there's a dangerous way of saying the mind imposes on the world that
for sure
robs things of their own spirit, robs them of their own conatus.
But that's the Sufi thing. Everywhere you look is the face of God. You have to reincorporate it. We have to have Jesus at the end of the cosmos.
That's right.
We do, because solipsism is dangerous. But I'm not the teacher of this. I'm a student of Rupert's. He would say that the mind is localizing in multiple places. Yeah. And his evidence for that, which I actually think is quite beautiful, is he's like, when I live my life as if I'm the only person, I'm not rewarded with truth, love, laughter, beauty. It's the return.
So for me, it's the amazing thing about it is and this is again what I got from Socrates and Plato and Spinoza. When the mind opens up in wonder, reality discloses itself in response, completely coupled to
so
it.
So the return is the evidence.
Yes.
Yeah, it's what you get out of it. So,
but see, this is different from the Cartesian project. Sorry for interrupting you, but this is an important point. See, before the period called the Enlightenment, I have to make clear that I'm not talking about Buddhist enlightenment when I do that, right? There was the idea there was a certain class of truth called, like, a way of talking about it is transformative truths. There are truths, reality will only disclose itself to you if you undergo a significant transformation. Remember, theory, you have to journey, you have to go and become somewhere, you have to be somewhere and be someone else than you are in order for reality to disclose certain depths of itself to you. Yes. Now, Descartes comes along, and for very good reasons. I mean, I wish I made the mistakes that Descartes made. I mean, on a free afternoon, he invented Cartesian graphing, which is at the core of all of scientific endeavor. Like, oh my gosh, what did I do today? Nothing in comparison to that, right?
The most brilliant way to say you feel lazy. I didn't do shit.
But what Descartes was proposing, and then Leibniz even coins a phrase for it, a universal calculus. Descartes is proposing, no, the mind is computation. The proposal of artificial intelligence is way back at the time of Descartes with Thomas Hobbes. By cognition, I mean computation. And we can make machines that do computation. It's right there.
Wow.
The idea that what I can compute, and all I need is discourse on method, right? What I need to turn my mind into as much like a computer as possible, and if I get the right method, I'll have a universal method that will allow me to calculate all truths, and I don't have to undergo any transformation in order for me to get all truths. It's the exact opposite of the idea that I have to open myself up and fall in love with the beauty of reality in order for its depths to disclose themselves to me.
It's like cooking yourself dinner and just having it delivered.
That's right. Or it's like reading the Kama Sutra and never making love.
Yes, exactly. The point of life isn't getting what you want. Is another way to put it.
Yes.
And this is another part of the crisis, I think.
Well, and at that point, don't lose that point. Yeah. That's a golden point, and it's interwoven with the point is there is no final. I mean, there's technical reasons for this. There is no final view from nowhere. There is no final, full, complete computational account.
Like AI isn't going to come up with the theory of everything.
It can't. Here's why. So we carry around a notion from the Enlightenment, and it was kind of a shadow of God, that objectivity is the view, what Thomas Nagel famously called the view from nowhere. It's how reality looks but not from any perspective.
From outside of it.
Right. The view from nowhere, right? Which is a performative contradiction, but we'll put that aside.
Yeah.
Now, the view from nowhere would be a description of everything all at once at every level.
Yeah.
Gödel, there can be no formal description that is simultaneously complete and consistent. It's logically impossible. Einstein, What are you talking about? You can't have an all at once. That presupposes time and space are absolute. Time and space are relative. That's the theory of relativity. That view of objectivity that we think is the mark of reality is logically and physically impossible. That is a blinder we wear that we have to throw away if we're going to open ourselves up to reality.
This is, again, we're back to you can be it, but you can't know it. The knife can't cut itself. The flashlight can't shine on itself. The sun can't shine on itself.
Yeah, Nishitani talks about that, and the fire can't burn itself.
But you can settle down. Rupert talks about your being, ultimate reality, the knowing.
The knowing by being, yes.
Is like a bath at the end of a long day of working in the cold. You get in the bath and you sink into it.
Notice what you're doing there. You're being coupled to it. You're becoming one with it.
Yeah.
Right? You're knowing it by being in it, being one with it.
Yeah.
You're literally coupled to the bath.
Exactly. Yes. And that's the kind of knowing.
Do you know the word truth goes back to troth, like in betrothal, to be coupled to things.
Oh, wow.
And belief, which we think about as the assertion of a proposition, comes from the German beleben, which is to give your heart to something.
Wow. But here's the great frustration, and this is, I think, what you're saying about AI and the theory of everything, is that at the final, like the wedding banquet, like what Jesus would say, the mind can't come in. It's wearing the wrong robe.
Well, the one kind of mind. And here...
the substance of your mind.
Well, what I mean by that is your mind insofar as it's doing propositional knowing, insofar as it's doing dianoia, right? But the degree to which it is willing to undergo noesis, metanoia, into henosis, being one with everything. But henosis is, and this is the great Christian transfiguration of Neoplatonism. My dear friend Bishop Maximus talks about how Christianity and Eastern Orthodoxy really gets this aspect of Christianity well. Transfigured Neoplatonism. Henosis is always kenosis. Do you remember, I think it's in Philippians, where Paul talks about how Jesus emptied himself. The self-emptying. There's a great dialogue, a multi-faith dialogue between Maso Abi, a great Zen philosopher, and Christians about the self-emptying God. Because the idea is the oneing. The henosis is always kenosis. It's simultaneously.
Well, that's the Trinity, right? I mean,
yeah. Nicholas of Cusa. It's one in which nothing is excluded, but it's empty so that nothing is enclosed.
Right. Well, that reminds me of awareness. The mind perceives our awareness as empty. Well, but it's actually full of itself.
So the idea that William James is a hero of mine. He was a sort of proto-cognitive scientist. He was a great philosopher and a great psychologist. I aspire to be like William James. And many other people have made this distinction, but his way, because James was very good about communicating to the public at large, he made a distinction between the I, capital I, and the me. And the me is when you think you're knowing yourself, it's what you're looking at. But the I is what's doing the looking.
Right.
And his point is, right, and I'll pun on the eye can never see itself, right?
That's right.
Because whenever you step back and look at it. And so he said, wait. And then this shades into the Buddhist notion that of anatman. It doesn't mean absence, like you just don't have a soul, get it. It's not nihilism. That's a ridiculous reading of Buddhism. It's like, no. Whenever you're talking about a thing, you're looking through a frame, right? When you think about yourself as a me, you're thinking of how you're a thing. You have all these properties. But the thing looking is a no. It's not a no thing. It's a no thing. It's a no thingness.
And your body and your emotions and your memories and the collection of experiences that you call yourself is being held in that I. It's an object of perception to that I.
Yeah, right.
But it is not itself
a thing. Right. It's a no thingness, and it is simultaneously. So, and this is how it shares the grammar of reality. Everything shines into its suchness. Like there's an aspect of this that can't be captured by any of our categorical terms. Because when I say bottle, I could be referring to bottles anywhere. And when I say human tool, but there's this here now. There's Buddhist suchness, but there's also the moreness. The fact that this is. Can you actually ever see the whole bottle? Can you actually? You can't, right? And this is Plato. You can't actually see, although you know the whole bottle, there's a through line between all those aspects, but it's not itself an aspect. Right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm building a concept of it.
Right, but the concept should be that, like, the concept should be incompletable because the number of aspects is unlimited.
This reminds. So when you were talking about we'll hang our hat anywhere if we have nowhere to put it, if we have no framework and we're desperate for meaning. This is like where we get some of that simulation theory, or like as soon as I'm not looking at you, John, you might just face the corner. I don't know if you've heard some of these kind of like more existential, dready theories that go around on the internet.
Yeah.
They're like extensions of truth. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's something.
They're perversions, I would say.
Perversions. Yeah.
Right. And I think,
I hope everyone knows what I mean by that. Perversions.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like you're on the right track. I'm saying like, it wouldn't be appealing to you if there wasn't something in there that
it's like the fever and the disease, though. Right? It's bound up with something that's really happening, but I think it's distorting our ability to perceive and deal with it.
Wow. I think, of all the things we've talked about, and we have to, Katie has a hard out at 1, so we're going to be done here in a minute. But what I'm trying to do is I'm really flying in my private practice as high as I can go, using the metaphor, but like really trying to dissolve.
That big world.
What's that?
That big world we were talking about.
Exactly, yeah. And I want to, it's not even transcend, but I just love tasting my, I always say tasting, it's Rupert's word, it kind of sounds funny, I guess, but tasting
use
my
the same word,
true nature.
I use the same word,
Yeah,
taste.
it's a good word.
It's also biblical. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Right?
That's right.
You see it cross-culturally in many different religions, the taste, because that is knowing by being. You literally have to put it into you in order to know.
You've grokked with it.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, it's become you.
Heinlein.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
But I'm also, and my wife, who's a wonderful counterweight to me.
Good.
Meaning I'm always going out there, and she's like, yeah, and we're also watching our daughter swim in the pool right now.
Sorry, there's that
like,
for me too.
Isn't that good? Well, you did it for me. Yeah. And I was like, what did you say? Don't take away their, it sounded like duration.
Don't take away their conatus.
Conatus. Yeah, that's my thing. Yeah. I'm always going like, I am awareness, and my nature is happy and peaceful. And it's also like, and it's kind of fun to chide and engage. And that's my final question for you. In the joke of the 6 minutes, is this a mistake? It seems like you don't feel like it's a mistake. I'd love for you to speak to this.
No.
So oneness split.
I've got it.
Tell me.
Okay. I want to go back to what I was saying about, like, reality is this weird, remember I said it's non-duality of presence and absence. Phenomena, shining. Everything is shining into its suchness and also withdrawing into its moreness. You, in the very grammar of you're always withdrawing into your no-thingness, but shining into how you are present in the world.
I feel seen. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. The grammar of you and the grammar of reality are fundamentally one. You are not homeless in reality. So it is not a mistake.
Yeah. I love that so much. I got really into something called A Course in Miracles. We'll talk about this another time.
Okay.
And it's very interesting, but its philosophy is that like it's very guilt-driven, and we've separated from God. We think we killed God, and that explains why there's all this evil. Yeah. We're projecting and taking out our shame. I found it very, very compelling and was really into it. But then I found Rupert and like what you're saying, it's like this oneness.
I want to talk to him sometime because
Rupert?
Yeah, because I can tell through you. I mean this as a compliment. You've presenced him very well.
Oh, I hope so.
Right. And I think there's a lot of convergence, but I think there's some things in which at least he uses terms in ways that I don't use them. Like he uses consciousness in a way that I don't.
Yes.
And so I would like to talk to him at some point.
I would be on board for that. See, if I talk to him, it would just be me parroting him to him and me. But if you talk to him, so I'll put you in touch with his team. I'd love to. Anyway, what I was going to say was I found Rupert and people like you, and it just feels more intuitively sound. If it's ultimately this awareness, I'm like, it's in its nature to dance. That's what my daughter's name, my daughter's name is Leela, the dance.
And Persig's second book.
What is it?
Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. The second book was Leela.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah. I knew Leela from Ram Dass from Buddhism and Hinduism as well. But I love that idea. It's in its nature. And he, last Rupert thing, and we'll get out of here, he goes, it's like childbirth. There's a cost. Like the evil, the discord, the chiding, and the fighting is like this cost, this sacrifice that it makes.
I'm going to give you Socrates back.
Tell me.
I am a midwife for other people. You say everything is giving birth. That's what the word conceive originally meant. Deepest conception is the ability to give birth. Yes. Yeah. And Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. But what is that life? The examined life isn't to sit back and sort of reflect on your autobiography. It's to give birth to you, because then you can help me give birth to me.
Wow, that's beautiful. Couldn't have ended better. 3 minutes early. John, this is going to seem silly. Our guest, to philosophize a little bit, to give you the ownership over the episode, you say the catchphrase, which is keep it crispy. It's just written down over there. I could say it, but we like the guest to say it. Would you honor us with a keep it crispy? Doesn't mean anything. There's no joke or trick here.
Okay. Well, can I first ask people to
please
please consider getting the book, Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. If you liked this conversation, my partner and I were, my partner in writing this, not my romantic partner. Christopher Mastropietro, my dear friend.
His name is Masterpiece? Or Master Peter?
Master Builder.
Master Builder, okay.
Right. If I aspire to be Socrates, who never wrote anything, he is my Plato. Plato is the gifted writer, and this book is. If you like this conversation, please consider
check out Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. Well, we need the help, and you make it wonderfully, like I said, enlivening and illuminating, but also very, very fun. So well done. You found your bliss, I think.
So now I'll say your phrase.
Yes, please.
Keep it crispy.
How silly. Because we can't take it too seriously, right?
Yeah.
So keep it crispy.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. What a wonderful time. Appreciate you.
You made it weird. You made it weird. You made it weird.